Now that we know how to adjust our audio channel configuration in Final Cut, let's move on to another very important phase of the audio editing process, which is setting our audio levels. I'm going to go into my 6.2 keyword collection, and I'm going to come down to clips because just like audio channel configuration, you can set your audio levels at the clip level in the browser. So that means that you make your adjustment, and then every time you edit the clip into the sequence from that point on, your levels are set. So if you can, make your adjustment beforehand, and you can save yourself time and effort later on. Let me show you how to do this. I'm just going to select the clip and then open up the inspector. That's this button here, or Command 4. And we have been looking at audio channel configuration, but now I'm going to come up to volume. The volume slider allows me to add or subtract decibels from my clips. So we start at 0 decibels, or 0 dB, and I have the ability to raise the levels by up to 12 decibels, or I can lower them to negative infinity, or silent. Now, what should my levels be at? Well, different institutions certainly have different delivery standards, but for our purposes, normal sounds like the human voice should peak roughly in here, between negative 12 and negative 6. Louder sounds can be higher. Quieter sounds can be lower, but nothing should peak above 0 because that can become distorted. So let's go ahead and set Christian's levels. I'm going to play around. Again, that's Shift ? And I want to make sure that loop playback is on. Again, that's in the View menu, Playback. We've got loop playback enabled, and we're going to use our Shift ? To play around. And as I do that, I'm going to come over to my volume slider and adjust it accordingly because I want to see those levels fall right between negative 12 and negative 6. I'll press Shift ?
On one another, you will see organically people that will step up on one another. You will see organically people that will step up on one another. You will see organically people that will step up on one another.
So I've raised it by almost 7 decibels, and now my audio is peaking properly between negative 12 and negative 6. You'll see this number here, and this is the highest that it got. So at its loudest, it got to negative 6, but mostly it was a little bit below that, between negative 12 and negative 6. So I've done my work in setting my levels for Christian. Now every time I edit this into the sequence, I'll have a nice baseline, so I won't need to do as much adjusting down the road. With that said, let's now talk about adjusting audio levels in the sequence. Let's see, we have audio levels begin, which I want to load up. And this sequence contains clips whose audio was not pre-adjusted like we just did. So our general plan is to go through the sequence and focus on our main audio first, our interview clips. And we want to make sure that all the audio is peaking properly. Then I can go back and turn on my supplementary audio, my music and my ambient audio from my B-roll, and then correct everything together. So let's come down and start with Mike first. I'll zoom in here, Command++, and I want to solo his clip. I don't want to hear the music. I don't want to hear any ambient audio on my B-roll. I just want to hear Mike. So again, that's this command here on the interface, or Option S. I'll press Option S. And again, I'm going to play around with Shift ? And I'm going to come up to my volume slider and make an adjustment. In addition to using my volume slider, I can also drag this line up and down. Notice that when I drag my line, my volume slider moves accordingly. I can also use the keyboard if I like. So Control+ brings me up 1 decibel at a time. Control- brings me down 1 decibel at a time. And again, that's my plus and minus to the right of my row of numbers, not on my numeric keypad. So let's go ahead and make this adjustment. I'll press Shift ? And I'll use my keyboard, my Control+ and Control-.
So in the United States right now, there's a little over 37,000. So in the United States right now, there's a little over 37,000. So in the United States right now, there's a little over 37,000.
So Mike is a little bit quieter. We're peaking just at about negative 12. If you see here, we got up to negative 9 at the loudest, but we're right at negative 12 and sometimes a little bit below that. So I want to make sure to bring Mike's levels up by 12 decibels, and then in a future movie in this chapter, we'll learn how I can bring those up even more if I need to. So we have Mike talking quite a bit throughout this piece. And again, it's from the same shoot, same camera, same microphone. Chances are the changes that we've made to this clip are very similar to the ones that we'd have to make to the rest. So let's make it easy on ourselves and copy the changes that we made here and paste them everywhere else. So I'm just going to select this clip and press Command-C to copy. And then I'm going to unsolo, so I'll press Option-S. And I can either click and then command click on all of my mic clips, or I can use my timeline index to my advantage. So I'll press Shift-Z to zoom to fit this in the sequence view, and then open up my timeline index. And I want to make sure clips is selected, and I'm going to type in mic. And so now here's all of the clips that have mic in them. And I'm just going to click and then Command A so that they're all selected. And you can see that now all of my mic interview clips are selected. Now there's also some mic B-roll up here, so I'm going to unselect those. I'll command click here, 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 and here. And now everything else should be my interview audio. So I have all of my mic clips selected. I'm going to unselect this first one because that's what I'm copying from. And now I'm going to paste to the rest. So I'm going to come up to Edit, and then I'm going to choose Paste Attributes. And I'm going to come over to Audio Attributes, and we are pasting our volume. So I will paste. Now you can see that if I select any of these clips, I have raised it by 12 decibels, all of these. Now, sometimes the voice fluctuates. Sometimes it's quieter, sometimes it's louder, and there are other changing conditions too. So while Mike was a little bit quiet here, you can see that in some places he's speaking a little bit too loudly. So I'll need to come in and make some one-off changes. I'll go ahead and evaluate this one, for instance. I'll play around with Shift question mark, and then I'll come up here and bring down the levels if I need to.
One thing that's common.
And I forgot to solo. I heard the music there. We don't want that. So I'm going to press Option S, and once again, Shift question mark.
One thing that's common in everyone that we One thing that's common in everyone that we One thing that's common in everyone that we One thing that's
So that's about right. Here, we have raised it by 7 decibels instead of 12. He's talking a little bit more loudly, a little bit more emphatically, so we need to make that adjustment on a clip-by-clip basis. You can see that the loudest that got was at -6, so we're in okay shape there. And I'll just go down the line and make sure that each of the clips has the proper adjustment. But copying and pasting your volume attributes across the board is usually a good place to start. So I'll continue going through my sequence like this, soloing our clips one by one, making adjustments to our principal audio. And I've actually got a sequence here where I've already done this with all of my interview clips. And I'll move to that in just a moment. But I first want to mention something about my additional audio. So I'm going to unsolo this clip here, Option S. And what is my additional audio? Well, it's my music as well as the audio that's contained within my B-roll clips. Now, as I mentioned back in Chapter 3, when I edited in my music and my B-roll clips, I proactively brought the levels down so that I could hear and focus on my interview audio. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to hear it. But if you didn't do that, I want to talk about how to go about mixing your supplementary audio. So let me load this sequence here. And again, this is where I've gone in and I've made all the adjustments to my principal interview audio. And this contains music where no adjustments have been made. And it also contains B-roll where no adjustments have been made. So I'm going to attack my music first. Let me first play it so you can get a sense of what it sounds like.
Organizations dedicated to military causes. And one thing that's common.
So it's too loud and we will need to fix it. But as we choose the levels, we can be a little bit more subjective. It should not interfere with my interview dialogue, but we should still be able to hear it in the way that we want as the interview subjects are speaking. So I'm going to, again, play loop, but with the music on, and I'll bring my audio levels down. And I'll use my keyboard, Control+ and Control- to bring those levels down.
Over 37,000 not-for-profit organizations dedicated to military. Over 37,000 not-for-profit organizations dedicated to military. Over 37,000 not-for-profit organizations dedicated to military.
All right, I think I'm happy with that. I brought that down by 14 decibels. There is this section here at the beginning where maybe I want the music up at full volume, and then we'll dip it down once Mike starts talking. We'll learn how to do that with keyframes in the next movie. Let's come to some B-roll now. And again, I'll play over this. This is something that has not been adjusted, as you can see in my volume reading here. I'll go ahead and play through this so you can see how it sounds.
To educate the business community on the value of hiring veterans. It's 180 community on the.
So it's obviously too loud. We know Mike's levels are already good, so I'll just make sure that when I bring this down, it recedes into the background, but we still hear some presence. So I'll play around with Shift ? And then use the keyboard, Control plus and minus, to make my adjustments.
Trying to educate the business community on the value of hiring veterans. Trying to educate the business community on the value of hiring veterans. Trying to educate the business community on the value of hiring veterans.
So I brought that down quite a bit, by 17 decibels. And again, we'll just go on to the next clip and do the same thing.
It's a 180-degree different type of view that we're bringing. Now it's a 180-degree different type of view that we're bringing. Now it's a 180-degree different type of view that we're bringing.
So we brought these first two clips down quite a bit. You can see that it peaked at -6, which is what we want. One thing to mention about your audio once you go through and adjust your supplementary audio is that audio is additive. So every piece of audio that plays at once is actually added together, so you do need to go back and make sure that the total audio is peaking properly as well, again, between -12 and -6. So sometimes you may need to go back and tweak some of your audio elements because of the way that audio works together. But here I have a sequence where I've done everything. We've brought our music down, we've brought the audio levels within the ambient B-roll clips down, and my interview audio is all set correctly. So now that we have a good baseline, we'll learn in the next movie how to keyframe our audio for when we want to make finer adjustments within our clips.